off by giving a little 60-second, like why you're in the race and what you hope to accomplish as a council.
You're the veteran, why don't you?
Veteran, wow.
Should we flip a coin?
Let's make that a Navy veteran.
Well, there you go.
Yes. One main reason is we have an opportunity in this town to grow this into a city. A lot of us aren't ready, but the demands are there and they're undeniable. And the costs, well, we've already been paying the costs, and now we need to figure out how it fits into our life and how it defines us.
Great.
So, my name's Justin Livingston, and I run for Bend City Council because I think the current council is a bit out of touch with the current population, and I think that was pretty well evidenced by the way the gas tax vote went down, and just by taking that, spending the extra $54,292, I think that it just showed that they weren't in touch with what doing the right thing is, and what the people really want. So after serving on a number of committees, even as a committee member, I felt my voice wasn't necessarily being heard. So I wanted to
Just in what
take the next step.
committees are you referring to?
I currently serve on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and then also I served on the Street Maintenance Funding Committee.
Okay.
And then until a few months ago, I was a board member and land use chair for the Old Farm Neighborhood Association.
Where's that?
So basically south of Reed Market, between the Parkway and 27th Street or Knott Road.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we go from Reed Market to basically Murphy. If you drew a line, if Murphy extended like it should, if you drew a line like due east, that's the southern boundary.
Great. Well, let's since we're touching on gas tax and its demise, and I'm gonna pop back and forth, and since you started, I'll start over with you, Justin. You mentioned you thought the council was out of touch with the gas tax, so
Yes.
Assuming you were against it, what's your thought about why were they wrong, and what would you do to replace that revenue?
Well, it's not replacing revenue because it never existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe they were wrong.
It's what I mean by needed revenue.
Yeah, well, I guess we need to define the need, and that's starting on the Street Maintenance Funding Committee. And that was something that I had a lot of heartache at throughout that process, and I was on record. I was part of a minority report that opposed the gas tax, and particularly to do. I think the main thing that was out of touch with that was doing a special election, spending the extra money, just to avoid a certain segment of the voters. I just think that's wrong. I mean, you don't play politics like that. But the ironic thing is that actually turned out more the voters that they were looking to avoid. But as far as the revenue, I honestly don't think that it's not an $80 million need, and so I think the way it was framed initially was incorrect, because if you read the report that the consultant put forth, they put forth the $80 million that everybody loves to throw around is that's actually an unrestricted, and that's how they word it. It's an unrestricted. If you had funding wasn't a problem, and the fact that you shut down, because they're projecting to spend $80 million in 5 years, we would shut down the majority of the town, and we have enough construction as it is, and enough detours throughout town that people just wouldn't have gone for that. So if you look at the next step down, what the consultants were suggesting was a $37 million ask. So that funding gap, I think, might not necessarily be accurate of what. And then also through that committee, we ended up funding $3.5 million extra for this biennium anyway.
So is it your position that the city has plenty of money?
Well, I wouldn't say that they have.
Or are you saying the 37 million it's a real gap?
Well, I would say that the gap isn't, because that was a constant moving goalpost. It was initially, okay, let's get to 3.7, you know, and then it was 4.3, and then all of a sudden we worked our way all the way up to 7.5. And with no justification of why those numbers and where the data came from to justify those numbers. It just wasn't, nobody supported that with the data. So I think they're making a leap to that $80 million, and I don't think that it's not an $80 million problem.
Okay, but I mean, you would say there's a $37 million problem or a $7 million problem or no problem at all?
Well, no, I'm not saying there's no problem at all, because clearly we do have deteriorating streets, but you look at, you know, probably one of the worst streets in town is 27th, you know, Street. Mm-hmm. Well, that's being taken care of through the sewer line, you know, installation. That's getting a full width, you know, repavement anyway. So I think there's some things that are happening between infrastructure that's going in, that's going to repave streets, development. 60% of our development has to occur within our existing boundaries. That means developers are going to be tying into water, sewer infrastructure, so they're going to be paving a lot of streets. For example, there's a developer that's developing the old Trap Club site on Broster House. He's having to do a full width improvement of that. So that's an improvement that the city does not have to complete. Okay. And even though those are lane miles that are included in that consultant's report, I think it's important to have the consultant's another report, because the current report's 3 years old. We've done a lot of road work since then.
Okay. Ron?
Well, Justin, I do disagree with you a little bit, but
I figured you would.
Some of it's on perception, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and have a little bit of faith, as I am known for showing up at meetings, and I am considering this last 6 years that I've spent going to meetings, kind of a second college education, even though I never finished my first one. This $80 million, I'm going to trust that that's a real number. And by the way, that's only to get our roads to like a B minus. That's not even spending to get it to where we really want. First, let me back up and just, I didn't fully introduce myself. I was born Ron Boozell. I'm mostly known around town as Rondo. I'm a community activist. I've been involved on boards and other organizations on issues which I feel passionate. I'm pretty sure that there's not anybody who lives in the city of Bend, or at least downtown, that doesn't know who I am. You might not know what I do, but I do fight for solutions outside the box. I believe that we're just too stuck in a lot of our, as Clinton says, our Mayor Clinton says, our old time, our small town thinking. But we want our small town. So that's a lot of the conflict. The bottom line is the growth that's already happened here has already cost us.
Let me bring you back to the question.
Yes, and we're talking about the roads. It's already cost us, and we must pay that $80 million debt, that road debt that exists. If we don't, so many other issues are in contact with that.
So where does the money come from?
The money comes from not growth. It has to come from somewhere outside. We've had councils talking about this. Clinton has talked on more than one council about this. My other point of commonality with you on this is that I was extremely upset as a voter regarding the claim that we needed to move the vote date to March and pay that extra $70,000. I think some of the conflict in the thinking is obvious. And it made me so mad I didn't vote for the first time in over a decade on any issue. I just refused to show up. I've been talking about it. Some of you may have seen the last 3 council meetings. I've been purposely taking Councilman Victor Skadowski to task. I haven't talked to him by name, but everybody knows that he is the one that made the main claim that we don't have the money. The money's there. I'm still having conversations with him to evolve this and others to evolve this conversation forward, because we must find a solution. It's going to be the first agenda item in January. It's at the top. We've got to find the money. It's not in our budget. We are under, I don't want to say we're an under-taxed city. I'm a libertarian-minded guy. I've never voted for a tax. But bottom line is, if we want good roads, we're going to have to pay for them. Our property taxes are only $2.60 assessed for $1,000 in this town. It's stuck there. Other cities like Eugene and Portland, and every other city in this state who's larger than us, have larger tax bases, 2 to 3 times as us. So recognize that issue. Don't just vote no against a tax just because you don't want to pay more tax because you think you can't afford it, we can't afford not having good roads.
So it sounds like you support a property tax increase as the solution?
I need a minute to talk about my solution. I've already talked about this city council. I call it Fix It Now. And it's an 8 cent per gallon gas tax, not a 5 cent. What it specifically speaks to is two issues, the gas tax and the ADA ramp solution that we have not yet found and we don't have a plan for. We must understand what it's like to be committed to two wheels and not being able to visualize our whole journey to our venue, the destination we want to go to. As people who drive cars, we are continually we jump into the car, and next thing you know, we're home again. That's not our experience for those of us who are limited to wheelchairs or even bicycles. We must use our growth opportunity to grow bicycle opportunities, safe streets for bicycles and other access, including pedestrians, because we're all pedestrians at one moment in time. So let me quickly talk to a couple things that are different about my plan. One is that we don't need a 10-year sunset clause. We need like a 4-year, because we don't even know how we're going to be driving in 6, 7, 8 years. So that's pointless. Second is I call a ceiling. So if the price of gas goes over $3.25, $3.50, we can figure it out later. Then we stop the tax. We go, come on, we're barely paying $2.25 now, and we can't afford 8 cents. That's absurd. So another difference is that a waiver. This was a large argument for people with fixed incomes. I've had people come up to me and say, we can't afford it, $10 more a month. Come on, if you're spending $10 more for a tax of a 5 cent tax every month, then you're leaving Bend and you have other opportunities to buy cheaper gas. So here's my answer. We create a waiver on a quarterly where if it's really costing you, you bring in your receipts and the city of Bend will refund you your extra tax paid. Thank you.
So since we're on the topic of taxes, there's been talk of the transient room tax and there's an excess there. If you had a choice, how would you spend that? So Justin, or maybe Justin, you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so the TRT, we need to work with the legislature because our hands are a bit tied because of state law.
So I should have said, should that state law change and we have the opportunity to access that funds?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and that's something that we need to work with our local delegation, and then also with other legislators to really, get them to understand, we're swimming in cash here for, tourism promotion, and honestly, they're not even promoting the summertime anymore, right? It's just the shoulders in the winter months. So I think we can scale back the tourism promotion piece of it, and so we need the legislature to change that law in order to give us more flexibility and more local control over those funds.
I'll speak to that real quick. TRT,
we don't feel the need to be quick.
Thank you. I get told that too often.
Oh,
sorry. I hear that all the time too. Sorry. We need to find a way to redefine tourism dollars, and what I understand is that is a possibility for us to do that. So I would like to see a tourist district created, and then maybe that will be a way we can move that conversation toward that. But the thing is, we are now spending $3 million a year instead of $2.5 million a year through the Visit Bend. And that is absurd because this is one of the two things we're doing in Bend that drive the rent hike situation that's happening in our town. I kid about this a lot, but it's absolutely not a kidding issue. What has been produced in this town? We produce homeless. And we don't do it by accident. We can't pretend. We don't know what caused the situation we're creating now. So my question, bottom line is, does growth benefit everyone that lives here? And if it doesn't, what are we doing specifically that creates it and continues it? Or what can we do, like this new money that comes in as a result of growth, how can we convert that to solve some of the issues that have been created? Fortunately, these are tourism dollars right now. And just like marijuana dollars, a lot of people are looking at pie in the sky things, and I'll tell you, solutions from these two areas probably not going to come within the next couple of years. What we have available right now is an opportunity. The only thing that makes sense. We voted against that tax, or the votes that went against the tax went because it was easy to convince, right? Unfortunately, these days that council is not competent right now. I hate to say that. I love my city council, I love my town, but we're not getting the job done, and now we're in a deep hole. So we have to be honest and say what that vote was really about. It was about both sides not telling the truth. And now we got to get past that. So we have established some trust, hopefully with the voters with us, and say we are going to go and say admit that yes, and part of it is admitting that $80 million doesn't exist.
Let me just circle back real quick on the TRT dollars. Do you give any credit to? I mean, there's a boom in tourism. Does Visit Bend get? I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about cutting their funding. Do they get any credit for boosting the dollars? Are they in fact responsible for the incredible windfall that we're seeing in tourism?
Oh, well, I would say that clearly they deserve a lot of the credit and the accolades for increasing in tourism. You know, it's a desirable place, so I mean, it's, you know, we're not trying to, you know, market a town that's in the middle of nowhere and, you know, it doesn't have, you know, wonderful features about it.
Right.
But no, they absolutely do deserve credit for that.
Absolutely. The block did his job as he was asked. And you know what? If he worked for me, I wouldn't want a guy pulled back unless I was purposely pulling back. The bottom line is, it's not there now, of course. But the thing is, one of the decisions that one of us is going to make next year is that contract with Visit Bend. And I am going to tell you, I'm really already upset that they're already getting the extra 10% above that because of the extra hotel money coming in. I've been screaming about that and nobody's paid attention, as if there wasn't a stop. And there has been a stop, but we haven't been using it.
Right.
So next year, we're going to use it.
Okay, it seems like Visit Bend sort of draws the ire from a lot of people because they're getting that money. You just mentioned their contract is up. Who else would you choose?
It's not about who I would choose. It's our strategy. If we know that how we're producing our homeless problems and our other street issues, people parking on the streets, living, with, by the way, is not just a homeless issue. As I love the Bulletin article the other day when they put a picture of this very well-to-do couple, admittedly living in their RV at Drake Park. And it's a completely different story than the homeless living on the streets. How is that? We have opportunities in this town. I don't have ire for Visit Bend. They did exactly what we did. Here's my specific plan. I don't know why, but the legal department decided at some point last year or the year before to pull a counselor off of their Visit Bend. I want a counselor on whatever board is spending that kind of money. That's a change. Back to we've gone the wrong direction on accountability. We need to go back.
So direct oversight.
Pardon me?
Direct oversight.
Oh, you believe it.
Yeah,
Justin,
I'm gonna disagree with that. If we hire a contractor, we do not need a board on there. I mean, on their board of directors, we don't need a seat. I mean, we don't get one on Knife River. We don't get one on Taylor Northwest. I mean, people can be responsible with the money without having a board, a seat. Because I think that blurs lines that just shouldn't be. As far as their contract, though, just like in any business, if my marketing is outpacing my capacity, then I pull back my marketing or I increase my capacity, one or the other. And right now, the summer months, we're outpacing our capacity when when business owners or when companies bring in executives or people that need to come in and they're doing business with them and they can't find hotels for those people to stay without months in advance of notice. Okay, that's a problem. And so either we need to increase the capacity, which there are more hotels coming online, or we need to back off. And like I said, I don't believe that they're actually marketing the summer months anyway. It's the shoulder and winter months, and when we do need tourism promotion there, because that if you run a hotel or it would be nice to even out.
I think that's why they're not marketing in the
right. Yeah, and so that it's that kind of stuff that we just need to have a better strategy to look at that, and that's part of the contract. And in every piece of oversight can be handled within the contract. We do not need a seat on their board, whether that's the chamber, Ben 2030, all those organizations that are contractors. we do not need seats on their boards.
Brian, you got a question?
Yeah, I've got 3 questions around affordable housing, and it seemed to be a theme last night. It's a theme throughout the city. But one solution put forth last night at the chamber discussion was to make more land available, driving down prices of land and making housing more affordable that way. Yet the current urban growth boundary only has a couple of thousand acres to bring in land for housing. How does that square? Is that going to help the solution?
Well, it's not. It's going to help it. It's not, and it's actually only about 1,000 acres of actual residential land. So it's woefully short. I mean, as I made a comment last night, developable land, raw developable land in the city of Bend right now goes for about $650,000 an acre. You get, on an RS lot, so, residential standard density, you get 7.4 houses per lot. By the time you get your infrastructure in and you have everything in place, you're looking at, finished lots, of, 150 to 160, depending upon what this site, looks like for excavation, in order to get your streets in, get your sewer in, get your water lines and everything plumbed in. And then, so when you say you're at $150,000, so then you have to pay $24,000 with the SDCs, another couple $1,000s for permits before you've even bought a piece of lumber or any concrete to start the foundation. So so now you're what, 190,000 before you've actually started framing. And how do you build a house that's 200 to 250 that's actually affordable for most people? You just can't do it. So we have to drive down the cost. The cost of land, and the only way to do that, just like with any commodity, is to increase the supply or reduce the demand. But we can't reduce that demand.
So is the urban growth boundary realistic in that case?
It's a good start, but it's not where we finish. I mean, we're 8 years into a 10-year, into a 20-year process. Because all the numbers and all the data points are from 2008. They haven't changed throughout this process. And so we haven't updated population projections. We haven't done any of that because we're stuck with data points from 2008. Well, we're going to be, by the time that gets accomplished and gets approved by the state, even when the land then has to be annexed, it has to be developed. I mean, we're probably minimum 3 to 5 years before any land comes online. So, I mean, we're, 7 years before we'll use up most of that land. And by state law, we have to have 20-year reserve, and we just don't. And part of that, the problem is the state land use laws. I mean, they're forcing us to do something that just doesn't fit with our, with what the culture of, the eastern side of the Cascades are. And we have a lot of EFU land out east of town, never been farmed, never will be farmed, and requires a ton of water to farm, by the way. So it won't ever be farmed. And so I think we should be using that land to expand our boundaries even farther. And we need to right away start on that next process, start working with the county, do a better job with our urban reserve lands, and so that way the next urban growth boundary expansion doesn't take a decade and millions upon millions of dollars to accomplish.
Ronald?
I know this is unusual. You're a limited, libertarian-minded guy, right?
I am.
Okay, and I am too. But we've gone a little different directions, and we might find solutions that way. We also might find a convergence at some point. The thing is, my path has been to join the Democratic Party for one thing, and to become a little bit more mainstream. But to admit that there's no libertarian that exists in a city. That philosophy has been really growing with me, understanding that libertarians are very independent-minded, want less government in our lives. But the thing is, like roads, we've got to admit that if we want something, we have to pay for it, and admit that we were using the roads and other infrastructure long before we actually decided to start paying for it. Second, we come into the city. Second, we're born into the city. If we're born in the city, we're hopefully waiting 16 years or so to be driving on the roads. But we do have to have that 20-year land supply. The thing is, the way we, the commonality we used to have is that we used to look at that the same, I think. I'm now looking at that much differently, as in, I don't want to see a skyline in our town. and I was more forgiving of an outward growth. But we have our 2,400 acres now. We've paid a high price for the 2,400 acres. But the bottom line is that libertarian-based thinking of supply more land and then you'll drive down the demand and the price isn't going to work in our city.
It's just basically.
Well, I know, but libertarians claim it as a libertarian.
Well, it's economy one.
Right,
so.
there we go. But it's not going to work in this town anymore. It's just not going to work anymore. And having that kind of a solution, it's just not going to head us down the road to real lives being affected in this town. What we have to do is admit that we're going to have to start growing up. And the thing is, the good news about that is that services that we need desperately, like transportation, 24 hours transportation, is good for the business community, can't fully serve per person. You should figure it out. It doesn't pencil out until you start having a more dense city. And so we must admit that that's what we need, and that's what we need to strive for rather than resist.
So are you, like, what I'm hearing is, I mean, you do support, I mean, there's a balance, right? I mean, you could go out, you can go up, but in light of the fact that we are talking about a 5-year or 6-year finally ability to build, would you rezone and go up now?
Not downtown. The discussion's already happening near 3rd Street, 97, to have, I think we're going to see 6, 7, 8 stories probably on 4th Street. There's a 500 unit ODOT funded project coming probably with our next term, however that works out. So watch out for that. That's going to come. We're gonna have a lot of density.
Would you support that?
Oh, of course I do. I mean, we have no choice now. So it's just like when we became teenagers. There were decisions we had to make, where we have no choice, or we stay immature. We have to move into a position where we're going to have a city. We need our charter review. I mean, we'll probably have.
Let's not go into that quite yet.
Okay.
Let me switch over to Justin. Up or out?
No, I think it's a combination of all the above, right? I mean, a good, healthy market has options, and we need, because depending upon the place in your life, you have different housing needs. Somebody going to college doesn't need a 15,000 square foot lot with a 2,500 square foot home, and those needs are different. As a family, I want my kids to be able to run around their yard, right? So we need options, and what the city of Bend has struggled with and not done very well is multifamily housing. We don't have very much of it, and we need to do a better job. We need to look at the costs and the development code, particularly that make it cost prohibitive. When it costs a developer $285,000 per door to develop multifamily housing, it takes a long time to get that. Rents either have to be high to recoup that investment, or you just never recoup it. And so we need to look at those costs.
Developers are recouping. I don't think they're the ones that anybody's concerned about right now.
Well, no, but somebody goes into, and buys an apartment complex,
Right.
or, but at $285,000 a door, to give you an idea, granted it was mid-1990s, but my family developed an apartment complex in the Salem area for $22,000 per door. Big difference.
Big different, way different town.
Way different town, right. Yeah, no, agreed. But inflation, we haven't had that much inflation to multiply it that far.
Right. Well, let me circle back to
Sure.
the up question. So how quickly would you be willing to say authorize as a city councilor 5, 6-story buildings on 3rd Street, 4th Street?
4th Street to the east, I would not do 4th Street. We need to.
Forget the specifics. Just
Yeah.
I'm saying in an area like that needs.
Yeah, well, I think
gentrification.
between 3rd and the Parkway is a good opportunity zone for that. And I would say I would do 65-foot height restriction. Move the height restrictions up to 65 feet. That basically gives you a 5-story building.
Okay.
So we talked about moving up or building out. I just have one more question. And last night the term micro housing was thrown out there and used. And as we know, the city has not taken a favorable look at tiny houses, for instance. Micro housing, who knows what square footage, but do you see in this mix of affordable housing, micro housing per lot with several units on a lot in the city of Bend's future? Start with Ron.
I would love to answer that question. A lot of what I talk about these days, both with high paid techies that are moving to Bend and who just don't want to deal with taking care of a large place, and homeless who have little or no options. We have properties all over town that we're not using that we might be able to facilitate certain opportunities. Thing is, most of the conversation in the last few years, many years, has been about developing single family housing. 55% is what I understand. And the thing is, the last couple of years, the meetings I go to, our council have considered other conversations, small little cottage developments. They're facilitating, our councils already, and we need to continue this moving forward, is to facilitate the conversation that says we're not going to focus on single family housing anymore, that we're going to consider other options like tiny housing or micro housing. We are having, if we don't come up with the option quickly, another option quickly, we're going to see more of what's already happening. Houses popping up in backyards. That we built neighborhoods. We create code to create neighborhoods a certain way, and we're going to have people building. We have people building units in their backyards without permission and with permission. So some of it we officially know about, and some of it we don't. We've got to focus on these smaller issues and think outside the box, and that's where we'll find our solutions. So that's really what I'm hearing on the street and in so many conversations. Remember, I'm talking to people who have been rent hiked out, people who are moving to Portland or leaving our city because there's no options. Talk to some of our businesses in town. They hang out to help one side. They can't find somebody to hire because what they're paying doesn't match the availability of the renters in our town.
Yeah, so tiny homes. If it's zoned correctly, I think that is an option. Like I said, I mean, a good healthy market has options, and that very well could be an option. The issue with the current tiny homes is that nobody regulates them. They're not regulated by the state as far as like a manufactured home would be. The egress out of them, I mean, they're fire traps, to be honest with you. I mean, when you look at the bedroom areas, the windows aren't big enough for an adult to get out of in the case of a fire. So we can't just go put up these without any safety, any safety concerns. They have to meet some sort of a building code. We need to figure out who's going to regulate that, and that's probably something we could work out in our development code. The cottage development, as part of the Affordable Housing Committee, we passed a package of reforms to the development code, and the cottage development was one of those. So in an RS zone, instead of going from 7.4 houses per acre, you can go to 14. And they're restricted. 50% of them has to face a common area. They're roughly about 1,000 square feet. They can have garages, but they're detached. And realistically, but 250 square feet, that some of these tiny homes are. It might be a temporary solution, but it's not a long-term solution, because that's 250 square feet is probably not even the size of this room, and to have people and possibly families, that's just a tight space. So, like I said, it could be a temporary solution. Currently, the only place to put them would be in an RV park. I mean, that would be the only place that would be zoned for a tiny home right now.
I'm going to change course here. Charter review is all buzz. People are pulling together to talk about it. I'd like to hear some of your feelings about some of the proposals that are on the table. What I don't want is to hear what the community wants. I really want your opinion about how you feel about charter review, or what you're looking forward to in a charter review process.
Okay. Oh my God, this list is long.
A lot of money for yourself, I assume, when you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just a special line item for Rondo. Let's start with money. As recently as just the last couple of days, one of the counselors told me specifically it seems self-serving for counselors to talk about money issues when it comes to what they would be receiving in their hand. I've heard that over and over and over again, and they're wrong. And I'm going to be proof of it with all due respect to you being elected. What we need is, and this is what I presented formally, and I even started an initiative a few years ago, which I did not collect enough signatures to make happen. But honestly, I kind of did it for the conversation. $35 a day per diem works out to be about a little over $1,000 a month. Who doesn't want professionals representing them being able to pay for the job they do? It's absolutely absurd to have any other conversation, and if you say something different from me, I will challenge you, and I may be provoked into name calling. I'm not talking about a paycheck, I'm talking about money to do the job. I'm not going to talk about what the community wants as far as mayor, but I know this community wants to vote for mayor. There are a number of 5, 6 different issues we have to change in our charter, and if you don't know what the charter is, it is what makes our city exist. There are so many issues that we have to change just to make voting for our city, for our mayor, rather than the way we select him or her now, where today we have our 7 councilors vote for that. I'm not going to tell you who I'd vote for, by the way, if that's a vote that's coming. I'll save that. I'll save that till later. But those are 2 of the head. I'll say those are the 2 biggest issues I found most commonality. That's
great. Justin?
Well, I'll start with the ward system. Being an East Side resident, I agree with the sentiment that the East Side is underrepresented, whether that's at the council level, at the committee level, staff. I mean, it's it's just there's not as many East Siders, and people feel that, and so I think a ward system was definitely a good way to go. We could look at either doing 6 wards or 4 wards with another 2 at large or something like that. For one, it would drive down the cost of running for council, so that would be nice. So you only run it for a smaller section of town, and because it's all about most people that run for council, don't have a lot of name recognition, so you have to get through all the weeds, and especially in a presidential and gubernatorial race, trying to get through all that mess to get our message out is sometimes challenging and very expensive. As far as I'm all for having an elected mayor. I think that's the current council makeup, and with basically a mayor that's appointed by the council is it creates a vacuum of leadership, I believe, and having that person, that mayor that can be a strong leader. Because what the problem is now, I think we have a vacuum of leadership, and you have people fighting for that leadership. And that creates, I think, a lot of conflict. I think that's part of the problem with the current structure, so I would definitely change that. As far as pay, I consider this a service to the community, and if, the way I would address that is we should have a charter review committee. Whatever they come up with as far as that, I have no problem passing that on to the voters, and
Right.
voters can,
Well, let me ask you, then let me put it a different way. Do you feel like a paid council is a more professional council, and that you'll get will you get a better elected official if they're paid?
Not necessarily. Look at the legislature. I mean, they're paid $2,000 a month when they're in session.
Right.
But they're in Salem, away from their homes, having to rent places over there. I mean, that's really just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
By the time you get rent and a little bit of food, and so I wouldn't say that whether I may agree or disagree with some of the legislators, I don't think that we have an unprofessional legislature. So I don't think that you're necessarily going to get a better council because you pay them. Because honestly, some of the brightest minds that make a very good wage, if you paid them 50, 60, 80,000, 100,000, they're probably making more than that in the private sector anyway. So I don't think pay is a draw for that.
Justin, you mentioned earlier that you thought the council's out of touch, and just anecdotally, you seem like one of the youngest people who's in the race this term. So how do you think, if people were paid, how do you think the demographics of the city council would change? Because obviously people in their 20s, 30s, they're concerned about paying for their families, things like that. They can't afford to be in council right now.
Sure.
So Just
Well,
your thoughts about that.
yeah, I mean, as far as age goes, I don't know that pay necessarily gets you a wider demographic in age. You know, even I'm guilty of this when I was younger. I wasn't, you know, too in touch with, you know, politics at a younger age. I mean, probably maybe more than most of my peers, but never to the point where I would have considered running for elected office at, say, 22 or something. I mean, that wouldn't even cross my mind. I was busy doing other things, so.
In a
I
charter
think 30
review,
is young for this county, so I think we can stretch it up.
Well, I'm almost 40, so come on.
Right.
in a charter review, would you favor the idea of term limits for local councilors? As you know, we have one who served, went off, is going to run unopposed and be back on. What do you think?
I'm fine. I'm a proponent of term limits at all levels of government. I don't think we need professional politicians because I think that skews what they're there for.
You know, the last few years that we've had our recession really cost us, one of our largest costs were to our actual city government. We lost half our employees, like 250 out of 500. The thing is, one of the things that we say we don't want from our politicians is experience. And that just seems like the silliest thing in the world, especially when we already have the opportunity with a pen, with a vote. We already have term limits. We exercise it every 2 years.
Okay.
But then what would you say, you know, we have counselors running unopposed.
Well,
What's
then,
the deal with
well,
our
then shame on
community?
this community for not stepping up. Because you know what? In past races where there's been 3 or 4, there's always like 2.5 or 3 people running for each one. And it creates a bigger energy and large. But we do have prohibitions, and one of them, I think, at this point makes it time for wards to be created and for us to consider a lot of things we haven't considered before. We are not a small town anymore, and we're going to have if we continue to try to do things the way we're doing them right now, the way we've been doing them, while we try to wear bigger shoes, it's just going to cause pain.
Can I address that a little bit? So I think the reason why because I'll be honest, I've helped try to recruit some candidates, and it was very challenging. I think part of it is because the economy is doing better. And so people are busy in their jobs, their businesses are doing better, it's taking more of their time. So I believe the economy goes into some of that. Why we don't have as many candidates this term, or, you know, it was very challenging to try to recruit any candidates, and I think that's a piece of it anyway. I don't know if it's the whole thing.
One thing I was just told this morning by someone who you have, I'm sure they have your respect, is that they also have been trying to recruit.
Yeah.
And they said very distinctly to me this morning that the reason why he's been told over and over and over again is that they don't want to raise $20,000 to $40,000 to win a race.
That's
That's
not an easy
insane
thing.
the perception, the fact that perception exists. Now I'm going to spend almost nothing, but I've been doing the work for the last 6 years. My job for the last 6 years is to be a student of this job and to be out there running. So my conversion is not about dollars, because I'm, you know, honestly, when you spend dollars, you're trying to purchase quite frankly, what I've been doing on the street. Not you specifically, but that's the way the system works.
Well,
Nicole, do you have another question?
Well, I want to get to the fun stuff. How much time do we have left?
fun stuff.
Get the fun question.
There we have it.
This isn't fun.
Well, I don't know if this is fun. I don't know which of you want to pick first for this one. Let's see. I'm going to go with Rondo. You get to interview Donald Trump. What are you going to ask him?
God. Thing is, oh God. I want to say, well, I'm not going to vote for any national candidate. He has taught me a lot. I would ask him any question that I would ask anybody who's applying for a job. I have run businesses. I don't present myself as a business owner, but we can do that conversation. I have been, specifically in Central Oregon, a collection agency owner. And so I would ask him anything I would ask any other person in line looking for a job. The thing is, I wouldn't be able to ask that question because he's going to start talking about Hillary, and I'm going to say, get the hell out of my office. And then Hillary's going to come in and she's going to start talking about Donald. I'm going to say, get the hell out of my office. So actually, I'm not going to ask any questions at all.
Okay, Justin, I want to hear your perspective.
Wow, that's a trick question because, boy,
What's the first thing that came to your mind when I said that?
that I would never have the opportunity to ask him a question. I guess, where I see him, I would ask him to actually stop with the rhetoric. I think his policy papers are one thing, and he just goes way off onto other tangents, and I would just ask him to, stop with all the, keep your mouth shut for a little bit.
So you're not gonna ask him a question. You're gonna be.
I guess we're giving a directive.
Neither one of you has a single thing you would ask this man. Who could be the president.
He's so
of the
far
United
out there
States.
that I don't know that there's a question that hasn't been answered yet. So.
That's true.
I really don't think about them, honestly. You guys think about all that stuff. I stopped following a long time ago. Our solutions and our powers here in Bend, I honestly don't think about what they talk about because they're not talking about solutions.
Sounds good. What's
Okay.
the next one?
Shifting far.
Okay.
Beer, wine, or cocktails, or neither, or none. What?
Or all of the above.
No, I'm sorry. No, I meant beer, cider, cocktails. Which?
Well, I've got an empty glass.
Depends on the night. Sometimes I love a whiskey and Coke, but I love a lot of the. I don't think I've ever actually had a cider, so I've never had the appeal to try a cider.
Here we go. I'm screwing.
Atlas is
So-
going to call you.
Well, actually, I'm going to an event next Thursday there, so I guess
There you
that'll be my
go, right.
opportunity. But no, I think a lot of the beers around Bend are amazing, and I'm a big fan of IPA. So, but it just depends on the night. It might be a whiskey or it might be an IPA. So
What about the morning?
the morning. No, I have a strict rule: no drinking before noon. So.
Okay. Rhonda?
Ron?
I'm purposely not laughing because I have a funnier answer. All right, I'm running a campaign.
And you can't say pot. We didn't ask pot.
Oh, damn. Okay, let me rethink. Okay,
I said cocktail. I don't know what that's open to interpretation.
this you're gonna love this answer because I've decided to create a Facebook campaign where I run against my hair, Rondo's hair versus me. So I have a platform for Rondo's hair, and actually I started it 2 years ago, so you might have heard of some of this. One day a week, we shut down the water piping infrastructure, and we pipe in free beer to every home in Bend.
Through the tap.
Free beer! All right. Number 2, we changed the name of Bend, Oregon to Beer, Oregon. Number 3, Homer for Mayor! Yeah, see, I can't beat my hair.
There you go.
My hair's gonna win.
Okay, so what kind of beer would your hair be piping into the water?
I'm sorry, I wouldn't have enough time for that question.
All right. Any others?
What's your favorite NFL team?
Go Seahawks!
I'm actually a college football fan, so go Ducks.
That was my second question.
Okay, yeah, so go Ducks. But yeah, it's hard not to root for essentially the Northwest team. But
Well, there's a lot of Giants fans here.
yeah, well, I
Or
definitely
49ers,
not.
sorry.
49ers. Yeah, but yeah, they've been made it hard to be a fan lately. So
Where's your favorite place to hang for a good game?
home. Just have people over, friends over.
His house.
Barbecue. So we're invited.
That was disgusting.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time again.
Appreciate
It's
it.
been really
Wait!
great.
Now, wait a minute.
Wait!
How many joints have you smoked this week?
Well, wait a second. Are we talking about the last 10 minutes? Okay, seriously, you gotta
I don't
ask
think
me
we're
one more
allowed
question.
smoke.
Okay, I'll throw it out before we close. I'll let each of you. Anything we missed? Go ahead. Ron, start.
Okay. Save Troy Field. My real issue is our trash wake in town. Everybody has a trash wake. Cities have trash wakes. I have a trash wake. Look up the word trash wake in the dictionary or online. You won't find it because I just made it up. I'm going to talk about at City Council tonight about it. We have a solution in front of us. I'm not going to talk about it tonight. You have to look at City Council's listing of past speeches given at City Council. You'll see tonight's. I am going to talk about trash wake.
Okay, trash wake.
I don't know how I'm going to talk trash wake, but no, I just appreciate the opportunity.
Anything we missed that you want to speak to?
I'm sure we'll cover a lot of things throughout the campaign.
Sure.
So and I just appreciate the opportunity to come in here,
Yeah.
and hopefully you'll give me your endorsement. But this guy might make it tough on you. But yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity.
So when we do our endorsements, will it be between Justin, Rondo, and Rondo's hair?
Yes.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, just to say I am seeking your endorsement this year. That's maybe the only edge I have against my hair. So
That's a change.
Now, why the change?
Me and my hair have been staying up late nights having a lot of conversations.